Hello and welcome to Identity Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue, and today is episode 90. I'd like to do a little housekeeping and just remind everyone who's listening to the live stream to go to LinkedIn and subscribe. That helps support the show. The topic today is the ecosystem driving MOSIP's mission. Our guests today, and I'm going to go by first names, are Ramesh and Sanjeev. Welcome, guys.
Hello, Mike. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mike. Hello, everyone.
And so before we dive into the actual content, it would be great if you guys could introduce yourselves. Ramesh, let's start with you. How did you actually get to MOSIP and becoming CTO of MOSIP?
I've been developing products for longer than I care to remember. And here was an opportunity to do something really meaningful where the impact is for helping people get into the mainstream using identity. And MOSIP as an open source solution for underdeveloped countries and the global south seemed the right kind of fit. So I got into it late in 2019, and it's been a fun journey. And it's been very eye-opening to work with customers across the globe and understand real problems and try to build solutions catering to all the requirements out there.
And Sanjeev, how did you end up working with MOSIP, and what was your career trajectory like? Like, what did you do before?
Yeah, so it's been about 20 years for me in the IT industry. I started my career as an SAP basis consultant. That was for about 6 years until 2012, where I got into got an opportunity to get into India's ID program. So I was taking care of the authentication track in Aadhaar from 2012 to 2017, helping that system to grow from zero transactions to around 30, 40 million transactions a day, and about 10 million devices out there in the field, and then large scale pilots, POCs, technology evaluations, and things like that. It was a very exciting space. And 2017 to 2019, again, I tried my stint in the private sector. But then, as Ramesh was mentioning, it's always about the impact that you are trying to give through your career. So that's where I got an opportunity to work with MOSIP. I joined MOSIP in 2019. Currently, I'm the head of partner ecosystem in MOSIP and trying to build a very active commercial ecosystem or a partner ecosystem in general around MOSIP, helping countries to build their ID programs around it. Yeah, it's great.
That sounds like a fun job. I have to say, one of the secrets that we have a great partner network, and in fact, we couldn't actually deliver Glue to customers without that partner network. And working with the partners around the world is one of the things we enjoy the most. So I think it sounds like a fun job. It sounds like more fun than being CEO, actually, to be frank. But maybe we could dive into the how MOSIP looks at the partner ecosystem. If I could put you on the spot here. On their website, MOSIP lists country partners, technology partners, and research partners. Tell us a little about that. Country partners really sounds like they're the end users, aren't they? Really, the customers, or the customers really partners here? And why do you think that MOSIP chose partnerships in through these sort of lenses or filters?
I think it's a very good opening question. We are looking at walking the journey with people. So that's why we consider everyone as partners, right? We are in the journey together. It's while it's their problem, we are here to try and help them tackle the problem. So technically, our customers are owned by our ecosystem because they are the ones who do the implementation and do everything, and we are just handholding their partnering both sides. That is why we look at everyone as partners. And incidentally, you will also see cases where the countries have contributed back to what we are building. So they are truly partners in developing MOSIP also. So that's why we think of it as a partnership. Um, as far as the classification goes, obviously you got the countries, they are the users who are giving us a lot of feedback and helping us shape the roadmap. And we have the technology partners who do the important part of integrating, solutioning, taking it and implementing it and supporting it out there in the field, right? Every deployment out there, they are the key folks who actually drive that part. The research partners are the ones who are allowing us to get ready for the next wave of problems while we are busy in the trenches, immediately rolling out production stuff. They are the ones who are doing all the background work to get us ready on some of the critical aspects of our roadmap where we are not able to directly focus immediately. So this could be emerging technologies, uh, things like AI and quantum and how it will have impact or how we can tackle. So they work on the long arc solutions and do the groundwork, and then we are able to take it close to engineering.
Could drill down first on the technology partners. Can you give us an idea of sort of the breadth of like just that segment? So are we talking about vendors in adjacent areas, like maybe privileged access management is something where there's no MOSIP solution and you need an adjacent sort of solution? Or are these also companies that provide the service wrap? And what other types of companies sort of, that's a pretty broad category, the way that you're defining it. What's sort of the breadth of and the boundaries of that
Yeah, so
partner
I
category?
would say there is literally there is no boundary to it because the opportunities and then the possibilities are unlimited. At the same time, I would like to give a little bit of background. What are the broad categories out there? So one is the set of partners, those who are able to give a technology solution that can work with MOSIP or can get integrated with MOSIP. So just to give an example, a biometric device that is connected to MOSIP, or maybe a deduplication engine, the ABIS system that is connected to MOSIP, right? So these are technology solutions that can work with MOSIP. The second category is, I'm going back to what Ramesh was mentioning. The success of the ID system is actually is sum of all its components, right? I mean, if one component is weak, the ID system is going to be weak. However good is the platform that we are having. So we also give a lot of importance to the capacity building for system integrators. So there's a second category. So we have a large group of system integrators where we train them through a partner program for the capacity building aspects, and then another set of category including ABIS, SDKs, biometric devices, print, and the solutions like that that are integrated with MOSIP. So we have about 110 plus partner ecosystem, partners that we have right now as we speak.
Ramesh, I'm going to put you on the spot here because this question just occurred to me. But open source itself is a type of technology ecosystem. How do you see open source playing the open source development project and community building efforts? Like, how does that connect into the partnership sort of ecosystem or ethos?
Right. See, our challenge is slightly different from the traditional open source play, where in the traditional open source play uh, we have the responsibility for maybe building something and listening to customers. Here we have the added responsibility that as a university where the program is hosted, we also sign up with countries who are interested in capacity building and support. We actually put ourselves on the line to go beyond development, to committing support. And as a result, a lot of times we have to make sure that the performance, the security, and all other engineering aspects are really up to scratch. And there are timelines against which we have to deliver. Right? We cannot just say that, hey, here's the roadmap. This is when this is coming out. So we have some timelines attached to our delivery. That's why we work in a slightly slight offset from the traditional open source development model. Having said that, we do get a lot of contribution from university students in the form of interns. We have a lot of corporates who do pro bono contribution to support our development. Roughly about 30% of our code base is actually through contributions from others. And we have our core set of engineers and teams, small teams that work on different modules that are happening. So we are leveraging open source contributions from others, and we are trying to amplify engagement with community. But it's a journey. We are learning how to do that while still balancing the timeliness of the requirements.
Sanjeev, maybe do you have any thoughts on this topic on how the ecosystem or the partnerships overlap with the open source community, or maybe?
So yeah, I mean, just to add to what Ramesh said, we also have a open community, community.mosip.io. I think that's where most of our call for contribution and our early stage releases. I'm sure Ramesh is the right person to comment on this, but then that's where we kind of put a lot of information out there, so that if there are, even the 16.9 claim 16.9 exercise was a collaborative exercise, right? So similarly, even the previous exercises that we had with, let's say, an Android registration client or any other such projects, first we publish this as one of the open item, that hey, this is a problem statement that we are trying to solve, and then this is what we are going to do, and then we are inviting participation from the community. Ramesh, would you like to add? Probably you can give one example, maybe a recent example, how we kind of engage with the open source community.
Sure. So I think the first sign of a true open source community is when somebody picks up your solution and runs with it without you even knowing about it, right? And then it comes back to you, and that's something that is happening repeatedly with us. Ethiopia, one of our large adoptions, they had actually downloaded our application from GitHub, built it, ran, and then when they were trying to customize it and change it, they had some queries. That's the first time we had a clue in months that they were actually even trying something with our solution, right? And subsequently, we have been receiving contributions from various sources. People will file some bugs or issues, or uh, raise requests to join our Jira internal Jira tickets that we have to the project, and then so that they can get visibility into it. As I mentioned, there have been cases where people have picked up and decided to contribute entire modules. The Android Rich client is a very good example of how uh, it all started as a community thing, and then finally, when we had to get it to production, that's when we actually got in a few engineers from our side also to spend hours on that project. Otherwise, it was totally a community contribution uh, initiated by others.
Right. But all modern IT infrastructure stacks for enterprise are built on these interlocking open source components. MOSIP runs on a database. It runs on an operating system. It runs in a Kubernetes environment. It runs with caching and all this other infrastructure without which MOSIP couldn't exist. So I think there is also a symbiotic relationship in this ecosystem of other open source IT infrastructure. um, what do you say about sort of the MOSIP sort of an enterprise project? And so, like, if you compare MOSIP to, like, let's say Terraform, right? Terraform, initial Terraform commits were mostly by HashiCorp. It got forked, and now there's another community. But Terraform, although still open source, I think they switch it back to MGPL, still is most of the commits come from HashiCorp. So I think, for a complicated piece of enterprise software, you need a professional team who's doing professional work, to have this mission critical piece of infrastructure. And having some type of organization behind it is sort of more the norm for this type of infrastructure than the exception. But still, I think MOSIP can't do it all, right? there's got to be other adjacent pieces of technology without which MOSIP couldn't really exist. What do you think some of those pieces are? Like, what do you really rely on in the open source world in order to get your infrastructure deployed?
Absolutely. So we don't exist in isolation. And one of the things is that we try to pick and make a reference implementation available, which is totally open source based, right? Where there are no licensing restrictions or lock-ins for customers. And we work with, as you mentioned, several of the technologies like either it's Kubernetes for deployment or Terraform for scripting or Postgre for the database, Docker containers. So we work with a whole lot of open source standards as well as open standards as well as open source technologies. For example, we have an object store, which one of the options is an open source implementation called MinIO, which is available for free for somebody to use. But we also are careful to pick uh, components which have enterprise support in case the customers want to use these open source components and they need support for timely resolution. We make sure that we are selecting components which have that option also in place. So this and there are many more, and we also have Java as our underlying technology platform core main
Yeah.
language, so that itself is also open source.
So Sanjeev, this is a pretty complicated stack of technology that Ramesh just described. And as we mentioned, the service rep around these deployments is really challenging. Um, and you mentioned certifications for partners, but even just like replying to RFPs, about actually doing the work. Um, at Glue, we have a no RFP. We won't respond to RFPs. Now, partners can respond to RFPs, and we will support partners, but Glue will never respond to an RFP. Um, can you talk about like sort of what goes into what makes a good service partner and in a certain region? Like, what are you looking for, and sort of maybe who's been successful in that area?
Yeah, so I think is slight change in the word because we don't certify any of our partners because we are not at the end of the day we are not a certification body. So what we do is we have compliance exercises. So that means if there are commercial solutions, we have standards put out there. For example, biometric devices. There's a long document that we have. People generally say that it's a little complex. It's complex for a reason because we are trying to address a lot of problem statements through that specification, including scalable attacks and many things like that, right? So our compliance exercise for a technology solution is primarily the partner building the solution as per the specification that we have out there, and making sure that they're able to talk to MOSIP in that standard way, so that we are addressing a few more problem statements like vendor lock-in, etc., through the interoperability aspects. So that's on the solutioning side of it. Now, coming to a system integrator, I think probably that's where your primary question is. So again, system integrators, we have a training program, and in that training program, we have some basic criteria for a partner to or a potential partner to come into the training program. And once you are into the program, we make sure that they are able to go through a self-paced training program under MOSIP Academy. And at the end of the training program, they have to showcase a MOSIP instance running locally at their premises. They will showcase that back to the academy, and only when we are convinced that they have understood the modules of MOSIP, we say that, hey, you are a partner of MOSIP, and we upload those information into our. We have a portal called MOSIP Marketplace where all the information is available. So this is the capacity building activity that we do for the system integrators. Beyond that, whether how commercially well positioned they are, what are their background, so we don't generally get into that. We are leaving that aspects to the countries to kind of handle. So that's the model that we generally look at. We help people build their capacity on the platform through a structured training program that we have primarily for the system integrator case. Yeah.
Okay, well, I saved the next hard question for Ramesh. I'm going to ask about the verifiable credentials ecosystem. There's a lot of partners in this space. There's, sometimes like DIF will have the Decentralized Identity Foundation, and there's all these organizations, Trust Over IP Foundation, there's IETF efforts, there's OpenID. How do you see yourself? I've heard that most use cases for wallets and wallet-based credentials, and is doing some good research and work in this area. How do you see the intersection, or where do you see MOSIP intersecting in this new verifiable credentials ecosystem?
Yeah, so our problem statement was getting people access by being identified in the system, right? In a digital world, the key to unlock it was the ID. But then we also recognize that beyond ID, we also need to enable people with these digital transactions. And when the usage of ID was happening probably in an online environment, it was easy to say, use our API or our ID provider and do it. But when there was need for privacy, or the need to support offline use cases or decentralized usage of ID without dialing back into the issuer system, we picked on credentials as the way to actually do, because we needed a trusted basis for the ID. So a digitally signed credential, uh, so given by the issuer, was a good basis for doing identity verification. So that was our beginning with credentials. And right at the time when we decided to go that way, we discovered W3C work around verifiable credentials. So even before the 1.0 version was published, we had actually started work using VCs. So before it became a consumer technology, we were using it internally for the digital version of the ID that we are creating. So when, let's say, a physical credential such as a card has to be provisioned for a person, the way we dealt with it was by sending this VC to the print solution. And the print solution now had a trusted digital credential on the basis of which they could create the physical credential. So that way there was assurance across the chain if the due processes were followed everywhere, right? So that's how we started. But then we started enabling authentication using that. So we built an authenticator first, then the authenticator became part of a wallet which could hold other credentials. And that's how it has been evolving. We do work with almost all these agencies that you mentioned, all these players, and because we are keenly watching how we can do something for the user. All our solutions are basically user-centric, right? Our user, the end user, is the champion who we stand for. So their privacy, their convenience, their data security, their control, their consent. So these are all things that we look out for. Uh, so we keep tabs on all emerging technologies and see what's easy to put into the consumer solution. It's been an interesting journey, and it's still evolving, and we actively continue to engage with all of them and contribute.
Sanjeev, I'll just sort of see if you have anything to elaborate on sort of interacting with standards bodies. There's standards for mobile driver's license, for biometrics, as you mentioned. There's ISO, and then there's all these federation standards groups. How does MOSIP see sort of in standard groups as also part of the technology partnership program, or where would that fit in?
Yeah, so we have a slightly different way of looking at that, because they are not, they're not a technology partner at the end of the day. At the same time, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, especially on the interoperability aspects. We need to ensure that we are using what is available out there. So that's where the engineering team, they constantly look through what is that makes sense to start with. So MDL is one of them. There could be other standards also that can be explored. But then we also have forums internally. For just to give an example, we have a biometric working group, and the biometric working group has got observers from NIST. There are industry experts. There are biometric labs, and we generally start with a problem statement. So the latest, you would have seen a recent announcement from MOSIP regarding onboarding a biometric lab for certification. That started with a problem statement. How do we really certify biometric devices in the context of a foundational identity system? And all of these standards bodies and other people who are in the space that are relevant, they contributed to help. This can be reused. So probably these standards can be reused. And this is the delta that is remaining and that you may have to add on to what you have. And we also have an IEEE effort that is going on for elevating this into a standard that can be adopted by many. So I'm just giving one example. So there are, I'm sure Ramesh will be able to give another 5 examples like this, where we were in search of a standard. It was not available, it was not there, but bringing a few people in that sector together who are relevant, and then trying to see what's right for the foundational ID systems and the countries out there.
I was going to ask about this question. I just want to ask a quick follow-up question on this. And by the way, each episode, if audience wiki page, and I'm going to put links to this announcement that Sanjeev referenced. But Sanjeev, maybe we could just dive a little bit deeper on this. So this device, what you're saying is MOSIP enables you to register people into an identity registry. And as part of that, you're collecting biometrics about them. After you've established this is a unique person or this is a person, you collect their biometrics. And what you're talking about is the devices basically that you use to collect biometrics at that point. And that could range. What's the range of those devices? And what were so what were the standards out there that you looked at, and what were the gaps in this area?
So traditionally, probably it's a longer answer, but I'll try to keep it short. So traditionally, the biometric devices, if you look at them, they are just photography devices, right? You just take the image, and then that you are using as is in the ID systems. But then there are other threat models that you are not really looking at. For example, how do you ensure that this is not a replay of a biometric image, that you are replaying the image from somewhere else? Or maybe how do you ensure that you are able to trace back to the device cryptographically, ensuring this is a real good device that was certified to be used for the country and not a spurious device that is replaced by someone? Or how do you ensure that you have a standard way of talking to these devices? So on these grounds, we were looking at a standard that is matured, answering all these, and then probably we didn't find something that is exactly suiting the requirements of these, especially on the scalable attack models. And that's where we started building something called secure biometric interface. So secure biometric interface is it's a open document, open standards specific to MOSIP as of now. But then we also understood this may be a good idea to open it up for the larger audience, because the problem statement is going to be the same, and we don't want them to reinvent the wheel. And that's where Ramesh and our team, they are working on the IEEE initiative to elevate this into a larger standard. So I would probably let Ramesh also speak about this. But then before that, the announcement that we made last time, in last week, regarding onboarding a certification lab, that's our effort to ensure that when we are putting out a standard out there, there is someone that the countries can rely on to get assurance on how these devices are built, especially on the quality, whether they are going to meet the requirements of a country. And we are not a certification lab. We cannot validate that. So we are also building an ecosystem of certification labs around MOSIP for addressing these problem statements.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good example, and there's 2 layers of partners there. There's the certification lab, who's your partner in a way, and then there's all the countries or all the biometric device makers who are deciding to say we want to show that our device is conformant and
Absolutely.
can be trusted. Ramesh, any thoughts on this? Just on this as an
Yeah,
example.
I actually want to just highlight that we first started looking at a way to simply plug and play biometric devices. Even that was missing. There was one defunct API which dates back to the early 2000s, and nobody was supporting it. So we had to go and create something. We did that, but then when we did it, we also wanted to make sure that we build devices which protect users. So we don't want relying parties harvesting biometrics and building biometrics databases. So we wanted to make sure that biometrics are encrypted at capture point at the source in the device itself, right? And that way only the intended server alone can actually get access to the biometrics. So we wanted to make sure that we build in security and privacy aspects, because biometric data is not like other data, it's highly sensitive, and we didn't want it to be misused. So we built in all these protections for security as well as privacy into it.
Yeah, you want it to be safe, for sure. Ramesh, actually, let's pivot to a slightly question here. I want to go back to the government as partner. And what makes MOSIP has been really successful. I think you have 7 projects in production and 13 pilots. So it's 20 countries. So you have a pretty good breadth of experience of dealing with a number of different countries and watching this implementation. What makes a good government partner? If I'm country number 21, what are some of the things that make the projects that are successful? What are some of the ingredients that makes for a good government?
Yep. So Mike, if you were a country, you're going to be number 27 where we stand right now. Yeah. See, uh, the thing is, it's like any kind of enterprise software sales situation, right? Is there a mandate? Is there capacity? Is there budget? Is there an immediate felt need? Will they champion it and make it happen? Is how we start looking at it, right? And because we have limited funding, philanthropically funded, and we have to make sure that our efforts are going into really good prospects. So we look at that. Second thing that we do is look at there are various reports that are there from the World Bank as well as other development agencies around the situation in these countries. And they have assessments such as readiness for privacy. Is there a data protection law? Are there measures for cybersecurity? So many of these things have been evaluated by them. We take a look at it. And then on the basis of this, I think there is some kind of engagement exercise where we highlight and get to understand how they want to go about things, and I think that is what results probably in an engagement model. Once that is clear, we sign an MOU where we support them through their journey of implementing it. And yeah, there have been cases where we have politely said we will wait for them to get ready because of their internal readiness, or things have to be clarified. Maybe there's something, which department is going to own it and run it, and is the data protection law in place? Many of those kind of things are there. While we are not mandating anything, if people are working towards the right things, we are saying we are ready to start walking along with them early, and we do that. So a good country is somebody who is trying to do ID for development and access and inclusion, and who is ready to roll now. So that would be our ideal dream country to work with. And if they have internal capacity, we are much more comfortable than if they don't.
Right. So Sanjeev, here's kind of a left field question for you. Glue actually was looking at a project in West Africa where they were building a bank ID system for 3 or 5 countries or something. We're sort of building one system for all of these countries. And these were smaller countries. I think that each of them with maybe around 3 or 4 million people in population. Because the truth is, it's really hard to build one of these and operate it. And they felt that perhaps by building one system, it would be more efficient for them. Do you see this challenge sort of in the government space? Ramesh just mentioned that, here's what we want to see to engage on a project so we know we kill ones. Do you think it ever might be possible where countries say, maybe we should work together on this and have a joint system?
So Mike, with your permission, I'll probably hand it over to Ramesh because he has been working on a lot of interesting, because cross-border ID usage is one topic that we have been focusing on. there are a lot of discussion that are currently going on, but I'm sure Ramesh will be able to give a better answer than me. Ramesh, you want to take that question?
Yeah. Yes, it's not our mandate to say how a country wants to work with its ID, but there are cases where, for example, a regional ID is uh, mooted, where the identity could be on top of an existing national ID, there could be regional ID, or sometimes in some cases people are saying we want to work with one ID, doesn't matter who is issuing it, and so on, right? But our general reading has been that there is a sovereign backing to ID because there's a lot of linkage to citizenship at some point of time. So we have multiple issuers, and the ID is being acceptable in other countries directly is a more common scenario. But then we also have recently seeing cases where uh, there are free trade areas, economic zones where cooperations between countries are there. One classic example is the East African uh, community. Then we have the Wuri in West Africa. Then we have African Union. These are things who we are working with. These are people whom we are working with. But there's also equally good examples like the European Union trying to do digital identity in a common way. So they are not first movers. These requirements uh, do exist. And so based on what the mandate is, based on who is authorized, we actually are able to work with them and save a lot of effort and pain, right? And if we can be interoperable out of the box, it will simplify so many applications for end users.
You can't outsource citizenship. It sounds like it's still at a certain point you need to perform this process in person. So maybe it's just something that it can be. You can get interoperability, but you like outsource this thing, this requirement. Um, Sanjeev, so MOSIP Con, I believe it's called, is coming up, or MOSIP Connect in Manila. Is it March 11th to 13th? And maybe about that event and how it connects to the partner ecosystem.
Yeah, so we had our first edition of MOSIP Connect in March 2024 in Ethiopia. That's where we started with our own marquee event. So we were participating in various other events so far, and then that's where we thought it's a time for us to have something of our own because the ecosystem is growing, the stakeholders that are involved, it's growing, and we wanted a space to maybe connect together and then discuss various aspects, not only with MOSIP, but what is next, what are the newer technologies coming up, what areas needs additional focus. So these all are helping ourselves to kind of focus the coming years. And so 2024, we had about 500, close to 450, 500 odd participants, about 70 plus partner organizations they participated in the partner ecosystem. Other development multilateral agencies, they were part of it. About 28 countries they were part of it last year, and this year we are doing our second edition. That's in Manila, and we are. It's about 2 weeks away from the event, so we are all like really working hard to make sure that the event is successful for all of us. About 50 partners demonstrating. We have a small expo. We call it a solution discovery. It's not a really a commercial space. It's more about showcasing solutions to countries. And again, about 35 plus countries coming up, close to 400, 500 people, invited audience. That's what we are looking at. And the objective is to make sure that we are reducing the gap. And that's in my mind, the one single objective that we are doing is we are reducing the gap between all the stakeholders and bringing everyone together under the same umbrella and then discussing the same topic, right, for 3 days. So it's going to be 3 day event. So we have from March 11th to 13th in Manila. So any of the people who are listening to this webinar are interested to participate and contribute, please drop us a note. We are more than happy to share a invite note to you. Yeah.
Ramesh, I'm sure they have recruited you to be a speaker at this event. What are you speaking about at MOSIP Connect?
We will be showcasing bits of a roadmap and seeking feedback. And we have this year a special highly collaborative unconference day set aside, and I'm sure that I'm going to be part of engaging conversations where we don't decide what's the hot topic. Our partners decide what's the hot topic, what's important. The countries will decide what their needs are, and what are the emerging technologies to be showcased is something that will be brought up by our partners. So I'm looking forward to that day of the conference where I can actually listen and learn a lot, uh, as opposed to me talking somewhere. And just to add to,
I,
yeah,
I hope
yes,
Kalia and Heidi are helping you with that. Are they going to be there? Kalia,
yes,
Hamlet, and
yes,
Heidi.
we are tapping her expertise at running unconferences, and she is helping us out. And yeah, I hope it's going to be a runaway success. And you see, we are an in trenches kind of organization, and even the conference is something that is it's not about what's happening at 30,000 feet height, right? It's about what can we action, what are the real problems, what are the fixes, what are the solutions. So we are trying to be as close to the action as possible, and that's where the solution discovery is about solving things today and finding solutions for what can happen today and connecting people who can really help implement to the customers who are there on the other hand, right? So it's about what can we do to take the next step forward.
Yeah, well, I wish I could be there with you guys. I would love to do an Identity office hours special event to connect you maybe online to some of us who can't travel. But yeah, it's always nice to meet people in person. I have been to Manila before, and I think that it's a great location. And yeah, I wish I could be there, but anyway, what else? Well, let's go into last thoughts. Actually, maybe there's a big topic. Maybe we could try and focus last thoughts for partners, action items. Sanjeev, why don't I start with you? Last thoughts?
Yeah. So we okay. So as a head of partner ecosystem, so there are about three stages that I see in the partner ecosystem building, and then starts with interest generation. Like we need to have people interested in the project, and then second is consistent engagements. I think this is where we are in right now. We have been working on tightening a lot of controls, making sure that we have more formal engagements. We are reaching out to few sectors even now to see how complete is the ecosystem. And the roadmap that we have is to kind of reach the stage three. That's more like a self-sustainable ecosystem. And self-sustainable ecosystem is possible when there are more success stories that are created around MOSIP. So I think our single focus from the partner ecosystem side will be to make sure that we work very closely with our partners, very collaboratively with our partners, so we will be reachable anytime, even if it's in the midnight. We'll make sure that if there's a call coming from a partner, we'll address that. And if there are about 20 to 30 percentage or maybe 40% of the partners getting engaged in one of the opportunities out of the 26 country roadmap that we have as of now, that's where I would say we are slowly moving into a self-sustainable mode with respect to ecosystem. Until then, we keep creating more and more platforms like MOSIP Connect, as we were explaining, the open platform that we have for various engagements, the marketplace that we have, marketplace.mosip.io. We have experience centers that are being built across the world. These are all platforms for people to come together, and that's going to be our focus. And yeah, I think that's what I can speak about as a uh, closing point.
Awesome. Ramesh, last thoughts, action items for the audience?
Yes, I keep getting tempted to become a partner instead of being part of MOSIP all the time, because the total addressable market is amazing. The kind of spend that happens on digital governance every year is huge, and we are actually helping accelerate adoption there by building integration, by building to standards, and so it's an exciting time. And I believe that our ecosystem has begun tapping this, and there's a lot more to come.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me quickly announce the next episode. Next week we have a company called Veracint, is the topic. The title is Tracking Identity Threats Before They Track You. Veracint collects a lot of data from the IDP, but potentially from other sources, and helps define this thing that we've been trying to do for years, which is detect fraud at authentication time, which is very difficult to do. Um, we just don't get and not a lot of bad logins, unlike email where we get mostly spam and not a lot of good emails. So login has always had this problem of it's hard to detect fraud, and Veracent is going after that with AI. So we're going to chat about that. Looking forward to it. Reminder to everyone to subscribe. And with that, we'll thank our guests. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Sajith. And audience, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mike, for having us on your program. Until next time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.